Have you ever tried to help a loved one with their health, only to find yourself in a battle of wills? It's a painful place to be, caught between love and frustration.
Hello, I'm John from Texas, United States, your friend and narrator of real stories. Stay with me until the end of this incredible story. Want to see your story told here? Then get in touch with us.
This is a story about that very struggle. For 50 years, the love story of George and Helen had been a quiet, comfortable rhythm. It was a rhythm set by the morning coffee they shared in silence, the familiar weight of his hand on hers as they watched television, and the comforting sound of his steady breathing beside her in the dark. Their life in retirement was not one of grand adventures, but of small, cherished routines. But a quiet rhythm can be shattered in a single, terrifying heartbeat. It happened on a Wednesday. George, who had always boasted of his robust health, suddenly clutched his chest, his face turning a ghastly shade of gray. The pain, he later said, was like a hot poker searing through him. The frantic call for an ambulance, the screaming siren, the sterile, impersonal rush of the emergency room. It all felt like a scene from someone else's life. They spent 2 days in the cardiac unit, a place that smelled of disinfectant and fear. The final meeting with the cardiologist was a brutal awakening. The doctor laid out the facts with clinical precision. George had experienced a severe cardiac event, a final warning shot from a body pushed to its limits. "The tests show significant blockage, George," the cardiologist said, his tone leaving no room for negotiation. "You have a choice. You can go home and continue living as you have been, and I can say with near certainty that you will not be with us in a year. Or you can make a radical change to your life, your diet, your exercise, your stress, and give yourself a fighting chance." The words hung in the air, heavy and absolute. A death sentence, with one single difficult path to a pardon. Helen squeezed George's hand, ready to face the challenge as a team. But when they got home, she realized the man who had walked out of the hospital was not the same man who had walked in. The George she knew had been replaced by a stranger, a man hollowed out by fear. The fear didn't manifest as a newfound appreciation for life. It manifested as a deep, simmering anger. It was an anger directed at his own body, at the cardiologist, and most confusingly, at Helen, the person trying hardest to save him. Their home, once a sanctuary of comfort, became a battlefield. Helen, armed with the nutritionist's pamphlets, began her campaign to save her husband's life. She cleaned out the pantry, her heart aching as she threw away the buttery cookies and salty snacks that had been the staples of their comfortable love story. She was trying to fill their home with life, but to George, it felt like she was stripping it of all its joy. The first dinner was a disaster. She prepared a beautiful piece of grilled salmon with steamed asparagus. He stared at the plate as if she had served him poison. "What is this?" he snarled, pushing the plate away. "Are you trying to starve me? This is rabbit food." "George, please," she begged. "This is for your health." "To hell with my health," he retorted. "I'd rather die happy than live 100 years eating this garbage." This is such a difficult dynamic. George's fear is manifesting as anger, and Helen's love is being perceived as control. Have you ever been on either side of a situation like this? How do you communicate love when a loved one is pushing you away? Share your wisdom in the comments. And so it went, day after day. Every meal was a confrontation. Every suggestion of a gentle walk was met with a bitter accusation of her nagging him. He refused to be a patient in his own home. He would sneak forbidden snacks, his defiance both childish and heartbreaking. Helen felt like she was losing her mind. She was fighting a war on two fronts, one against his heart disease and another against the very man she was trying to save. The stress was a physical weight on her shoulders, and with it came the insomnia. She would lie awake for hours, listening to the sound of George's breathing, her own heart pounding. Every small sigh sent a jolt of panic through her. Is this it? Is he leaving me now? She felt utterly alone in her struggle. She prayed, but her prayers felt like empty words flung into a void. God, please, she would whisper, give me strength. Help him see. But the man sleeping beside her remained a stranger, locked away in his own fortress of fear. Her love for him was being eroded by a constant, daily friction. She looked at him one night as he slept, his face etched with tension, and she felt a chilling thought. It wasn't the heart disease that was going to kill him. It was his own fear. And it was going to take her down with him. The breaking point came after a week of relentless struggle. George had refused to take his medication. They had a terrible fight, the worst of their 50-year marriage. That night, after he had fallen into a fitful sleep, Helen sat at the kitchen table and she wept. She cried from fear, from exhaustion, from the profound loneliness of being a caregiver to a man who refused her care. She felt like a failure. Her love wasn't enough. She rested her head on the cool wood of the table and felt a despair so complete it was like a physical death. In her exhaustion, her mind drifted to her small bookshelf. She thought of the Bible her mother had given her when she and George were married. With leaden steps, she went to the living room and pulled it from the shelf. She wasn't looking for a miracle or a divine sign. She was just looking for a momentary distraction. She let the book fall open, and her eyes, blurry with tears, landed on a story she knew well but had never truly understood. It was the story of Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, the night before his crucifixion. She read the familiar words, but saw them with a new heart. She saw Jesus, a figure she had always associated with divine power and miracles, on his knees, his soul overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. He was afraid. The Son of God was admitting his fear and asking for the burden to be taken away. In that moment, Helen's entire perspective on her husband's struggle was shattered and then reassembled in a new, more compassionate light. George's anger, his denial, his stubborn resistance, it wasn't a rejection of her or a flaw in his character. It was his Gethsemane. It was the raw, terrified cry of a man facing his own mortality, a man who did not want to drink from the cup of suffering that had been placed before him. And what had she been doing? She had been acting like a stern disciple, telling him to simply accept it, to get up and follow the rules, completely blind to the agony of his spirit. She had been trying to manage his fear instead of sharing it. This is such a profound insight, realizing that even Jesus experienced fear. Have your faith ever given you a new perspective on a loved one's struggle, helping you to find compassion instead of frustration? Share that moment with us. In the quiet of the kitchen, with the Bible open before her, Helen's prayer changed. She stopped praying for God to fix George. She started praying for God to change her. Lord, she whispered, her voice thick with a new kind of tears, not of despair, but of repentance. Forgive me. I haven't been his partner. I've been his warden. Give me the grace to sit with him in his fear. Give me the wisdom to love the man he is right now, not the man I want him to be. Show me how to walk with him through this, not to drag him. A profound peace settled over her. The insomnia that had plagued her for weeks finally loosened its grip, and she went to bed, not with a solution, but with a new mission. The next morning, she rose before George. She didn't prepare a plate of health food. She prepared 2 identical plates of oatmeal with sliced bananas and a sprinkle of cinnamon. a simple, warm meal. When George came into the kitchen, his face already set in a grim mask of defiance. Ready for the morning battle, Helen simply motioned to the chair opposite her. "I made you breakfast, George," she said softly. He eyed the plate with suspicion. "It's oatmeal," he grumbled. "It's what the cardiologist would approve of, I'm sure." "Yes," Helen said, sitting down with her own plate. "It is." She didn't push or cajole. She simply began to eat. After a moment of confused silence, she spoke again, her voice steady and clear. "George, I need to apologize to you. I've been so focused on the doctor's orders, on your health, that I forgot about you. I forgot about us." She looked up and met his gaze. "I realize now that you are afraid, and you have every right to be. And I am so sorry that I haven't been a safe place for your fear. I've been fighting you when I should have been holding your hand." Helen's apology is so powerful because she's admitting her own fear was driving her actions. It takes immense courage to be that vulnerable. Have you ever found that admitting your own feelings was the key to breaking down a wall with someone you love? Let us know in the comments. George stared at her, his fork frozen halfway to his mouth. This was not the nagging, pleading woman from yesterday. This was the Helen he had married, the one who could see straight into his soul. "I'm scared too," she continued, her voice breaking slightly. "I'm terrified of losing you. I think my own fear made me try to control everything, to force you to be healthy. It was wrong. This is your battle to fight, not mine. But you don't have to fight it alone. I can't take away the fear, but I can sit here with you in it. We can be afraid together." He said nothing. He just looked at her, his hard expression slowly softening, the anger in his eyes being replaced by a deep, weary sadness. He slowly lowered his fork and took a bite of the oatmeal. It was a small gesture, but it was a truce, a beginning. Helen knew then that their love story was not over. It was just entering a new, more difficult chapter that required a different kind of love. Over the next few days, she changed her entire approach. She stopped talking about calories and cholesterol. She stopped mentioning the cardiologist. Instead, she started talking about their future, but in a new way. "George," she said one afternoon as they sat on the porch, "I was thinking about our grandsons. Graduation next spring. I want to be there with you, holding your hand." Another day, she said, "Remember that little diner by the lake we used to love? I want to go back there with you, just once more, and share a piece of apple pie." She was no longer selling him a diet. She was reminding him of a life they could still have together. She was reigniting his will to live, not through fear of death, but through a desire for more shared moments of life. The biggest battle was exercise. The cardiologist had been clear that daily movement was non-negotiable. But every time Helen had suggested it, George had shut down. One sunny morning, after a week of their new, fragile peace, Helen stood before him. "My love," she said, using a term she hadn't used in months. "The doctor said you need to walk, and I know you hate it, but I was thinking, I need to walk too. For my own health, for my own stress. I don't want to do it alone. Will you come with me? Not for the doctor, not for your heart, but for me. Just to the end of the driveway and back. As my partner." She held out her hand. George looked at her outstretched hand, then at her face, which was filled not with expectation, but with a simple, honest plea. He looked tired. He looked old. But as he took her hand, she felt a flicker of the old strength in his grip. He grumbled, of course. "Just to the driveway, Helen. Not a step further." "Just to the driveway," she agreed, her heart soaring. He rose slowly from his chair, his joints stiff, They walked out the front door into the bright morning sun. Their steps were slow, his gait unsteady. It was a far cry from the vigorous hikes of their younger years. But they were walking. And they were walking together. Hand in hand, they made their way down the short driveway, a husband and wife taking the first tentative steps on a new and uncertain journey, bound not by a doctor's orders but by a 50-year-old promise to face whatever came their way together. That first walk was the hardest. It was a slow, shuffling journey of only a few yards, but it felt like crossing a vast desert. Every step for George was a painful acknowledgement of his new fragility, and every step for Helen was a battle against her urge to rush him or coddle him. But they did it. And the next day, they did it again. The driveway became the corner, and the corner eventually became the block. Their walks became a silent, sacred ritual. Some days George would grumble about the ache in his legs. Other days, he would point out a bird in a tree, a flicker of his old self. Helen learned to read his moods, to know when to push gently and when to simply be a quiet, supportive presence beside him. The war in their kitchen softened into a cautious negotiation. Helen discovered that if she involved him in the process, his resistance faded. He would sit at the kitchen table and chop vegetables, his movements slow and deliberate. It gave him a sense of purpose, a feeling of contributing to his own well-being. This shift from a battle to a partnership is everything. It's often the small, shared daily efforts that rebuild a relationship. What's a small daily ritual that brings you and a loved one closer together? We'd love to hear about it. They learned to cook together again, creating new, healthier recipes. Their kitchen was no longer a battleground. It was a workshop where they were slowly, painstakingly rebuilding their life. Their love story was finding a new rhythm, one based not on effortless comfort, but on conscious, daily effort. The follow-up appointment with the cardiologist 3 months later was a milestone. This time, Helen didn't go alone in spirit. George walked in beside her, not as a condemned man, but as a partner in his own health. He answered the doctor's questions himself. When the cardiologist looked at the new test results, he raised his eyebrows in surprise. "Well, George," he said, a genuine smile on his face. "The numbers are still high, but they are significantly better. Your blood pressure is down. Your cholesterol is improving. Whatever you two are doing, it's working." That feeling of pride George felt is so important. It's about regaining a sense of control and dignity. What small victories have you celebrated on your own health journey that made you feel proud and hopeful? In that moment, George felt a surge of pride, an emotion he thought he had lost forever. It wasn't the pride of a strong man who needed no help. It was the pride of a man who had faced his own fear and had taken the first steps to overcome it. He had done the work. They had done the work. As they left the clinic, George reached for Helen's hand, his grip a little stronger than it had been months before. "Thank you," he said, the words simple, but carrying the weight of everything they had been through. Helen's own health began to improve. The insomnia, born from stress and a feeling of helpless isolation, began to recede as a new sense of partnership bloomed. With her nights more peaceful, she found the energy to continue her own quiet spiritual practice. She would read her Bible in the early morning light, finding new meaning in old verses. She saw the story of Jesus not just as a divine drama, but as a human one, filled with moments of fear, friendship, and profound love in the face of suffering. One evening, she was reading a psalm aloud, and George, who had been listening quietly, said, "My mother used to love that one." It was an opening, an invitation. Helen started reading a short passage to him each night before they went to sleep. It became their final routine of the day, a moment of shared peace. It wasn't a formal prayer, but it was a form of worship, an acknowledgement of a presence larger than their own fear, a quiet trust in God's grace. They learned that faith wasn't about expecting a miraculous cure, but about finding the strength to live with the reality of their situation. Their love, once a quiet and assumed presence, became an active, daily choice. It was in the healthy meal she prepared. It was in his willingness to take one more step on their walk. It was in the way she would patiently wait for him to finish a sentence when his thoughts grew clouded. It was in the way he would reach for her hand, a silent acknowledgement of their unbreakable bond. A year passed. It was a year of countless small battles, of progress and setbacks, of moments of frustration and moments of grace. One evening, they were sitting on their porch, just as they had done 1,000 times before. George was thinner, and his movements were still slow, but his eyes were clear. The fear was still there, a quiet passenger on their journey, but it no longer sat in the driver's seat. He turned to Helen, his face illuminated by the setting sun. "You know," he said, his voice steady, "that doctor gave me a year to live if I didn't change." Helen's heart caught in her throat. "He did," she said softly. "Well," George said, a small, wry smile playing on his lips. "It's been a year." He squeezed her hand. "Thank you, Helen, for not letting me give up. Thank you for not giving up on me." In his words, Helen heard the entirety of their love story, its comfortable past, its terrifying crisis, and its hard-won, beautiful present. They had faced the greatest test of their marriage and had come through, not unscathed, but transformed, their love deeper and more resilient than ever before. The story of Helen and George is a testament to the fact that the most profound love stories are not the ones without conflict, but the ones that endure it. It teaches us that when facing a health crisis, the greatest healing can come from partnership, from the choice to be afraid together rather than alone. It shows that faith is not always about a dramatic miracle, but about finding the divine strength to take the next small, difficult step day after day. If this story of courage, partnership, and enduring love resonated with you, please honor it by leaving a like to help it reach others who may be in the midst of their own struggles. And please subscribe to Stories Beyond 50 for more real stories about the challenges and triumphs of life's later chapters. Now, we turn this over to you, our cherished community. How have you and your partner faced a health crisis together? What did you learn about your love and about your own strength during that time? How does your faith in God help you navigate the fear that comes with illness and old age? Your wisdom is a gift, and we invite you to share it in the comments below. And if the words are hard to find, but you believe in the sacred power of facing life's greatest challenges together, just write the single word "together" in the comments. Let us stand with you. Every story, every comment is read and valued. Thank you for your strength and your heart. God bless you, and we will see you in the next story.